everybody, on this fine Thursday. Luke Jackson, co-editor, myself, co-editor Andrew Coles, and we are joined by photographer Alastair Brook, Wheels Australia, Street Machine, 4x4 Australia. Welcome, Alastair. How are you going?
Thank you very much for having me, guys. It's an absolute privilege. I've seen the sort of people that have been on before, and I'm completely surprised when I was asked to do this. So yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
No, it's a thrill. I mean, just speaking from my own perspective, I've certainly loved following your work and seeing what you get up to, and sort of seeing an element of how the sausage is made a little bit in terms of some of the biggest car magazines in Australia. So it's awesome to have you on. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, Luke, we're all in different spots. I'm in Cambridge, UK. Our run of good weather has expired, and it's back to usual programming of grey skies and dreary, endless rain and cold, blusty breezes. Luke, Adelaide, coldest day on record.
I laughed hard at that, actually. That was pretty funny. Like, everyone getting all Instagram posting all pictures of ice on cars and, oh, there's ice on my grass and everything. And I'm just thinking back to Tiger Tasmania, middle of April, and negative 1 million degrees and can't feel my toes, and going, it's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, it could be worse. I mean, there's no race cars and fumes and excitement of that, but it's not that bad.
Exactly.
Alistair,
how's the way you are? Have you got some sunshine?
I have been today. We've had a really good run of quite cold days, but they've been quite sunny. But I've been locked inside doing a bit of work, so it's I'm sure now that I've finished it all, it'll be dreary and cloudy, and I'll just sit inside all the time.
Hey, but we have beer, so it's all okay.
We have beer.
What are you drinking? Beer. What have you got tonight, Alistair?
I've got a Colonial Draft Kolsch Ale. Please, no one judge me for this, because the other choice was a bit grim. So,
well, I'm all good. I'm being supportive and Adelaide local. I've got Swell Brewing.
Oh, good choice.
Ale,
good choice.
Which is brewed little micro brewery here in the McLaren Vale, in quite a big wine region actually. So.
The outlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
The absolute mavericks.
Yep.
Of the alcoholic beverage in South Australia.
So good. We've checked off the weather. We've checked off what we're drinking. Maybe we should jump on to we've got the important subjects. So, Alastair, why don't you start by giving us a rundown of who you are and what you do, what you get to call work.
Hi, my name is Alastair, and I take photos for some of Australia's biggest and coolest car magazines and other machinery magazines, actually. So under the Bauer umbrella, the Bauer Trader umbrella, you've got stuff like Wheels Magazine and Motor Magazine and Street Machine and Unique Cars and 4x4. But then you've also got a lot of industry stuff like buses. There's ATN and ABC, which is and owner driver. So there's like buses, trucks, and then you've got farm machinery and everything. So yeah, it's never boring. You're never really shooting one thing, and it's usually something that I have a great interest in. So it's a really good thing to do.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because I've noticed, and I'm not saying that either of us would be any different, but your Instagram feed is full of GT2 RSs and Camaros doing big glary skids on racetracks and whatnot. Haven't seen many buses and farm machinery.
I've been disappointed. There's not more like 2019 model release man buses going around.
I mean, I built an audience, and I think they'd probably get a little thrown off if I just. I mean, they're enough when I do. I mean, I don't do it often. I should probably do it more, but sometimes when I put up a 4x4 post, and that gets everyone like, I didn't know you did 4-wheel drives, and I thought you did cars, and I'm like, do everything. You don't just see all of it.
Calm down.
Okay?
So Is that the case? Because I know, we've spoken to a few people that have a bit of a portfolio of titles, and it really is those trade publications that are the bread and butter that kind of underpin the fun, sexy stuff. Is that kind of the way at Bauer that Wheels and obviously Motor, I find it quite interesting having two allegedly kind of competing titles in the same portfolio, which is interesting. But yeah, is that the case where really like that's the job and sort of the cherry is the sports car stuff, or is it really just a pretty good spread?
It's actually inverted. Most of the stuff that I do is the car stuff, and not as often do I get sent to truck yards or big adventures with road trains or anything like that. So the ratio is definitely in my favor in terms of what I'm personally interested in. I'm not sure if maybe just who I am. People are like, oh, he doesn't want to do farms. I don't know. But I just seem to get sent on all the car stuff, which I'm more than happy to do.
I don't know. Maybe a good shot of a combine doing a big drift in a paddock somewhere would be pretty cool.
I think a tracking shot of a combine with like all the sort of hay and the grass
and just the shit going. Yeah.
I think it was Puppy Knuckles that did a tracking shot of a monster truck, Bigfoot, I think, at the end of last year.
Yeah, I remember that.
I remember it was during Picotti because I was having this discussion with another photographer, Nathan, and Scott Newman, who's the associate editor of Motor. And they seem to think that it was all photoshopped because it's a bit of an illusion with how much tread must be going around that wheel for what motion it looks like compared to how fast it looks like it's going on the ground. And I think doing stuff, I mean, yeah, of course, monster trucks is definitely not farm machinery. But I think, doing tracking shots of different machines like that would be quite interesting. I've done a road train, and I was personally surprised I could get it all in frame, which was fun.
That's were you in a car alongside with a sort of a super wide angle capturing it, or were you sort of elevated a little bit?
No,
somehow?
I was in a car on a closed bit of road, and it was interesting. We didn't have too much space still, but it was interesting to do that. And it's weird how it's almost an equation as to what you have to do and how you have to do it, and the end result is exactly the same. It's just that the X bit in the middle is different, but whether that be a half-kilometer long truck, I mean, it's not half-kilometer, but a massive truck or like a supercar, it's it's the same sort of thing that we have to do.
Yeah, actually, I really think you should give the farm machinery another thought, because I guess I can admit this, my guilty pleasure of lockdown, and I'm sure we can all discuss that our lockdown sort of guilty pleasures ebb and flow depending on where we're at. But I've, Harry Metcalf, and obviously Harry's Garage, founder of Evo magazine, he's good. But have you guys been watching Harry's farm?
I haven't, but I also know hobby farms are a big thing for like old money. Like Clarkson's on it, I think.
Yes, but because Harry was a farmer. Like he is a farmer, and he started this YouTube series where he, it's Harry's Garage is obviously about the cars and whatnot and driving, but Harry's farm, where he goes and sort of tours the farm and shows you the wheat and sort of explains the effect of the weather and the wheat. And I found it far more interesting and exciting than I'd care to admit. So just saying, don't write the farm machinery.
Oh no, I mean, Microsoft Farm Simulator is doing bits, I think, as well. I mean, people are plowing and meticulously so, and all the more power to them, I think.
Actually, my brother-in-law's housemate does Farming Simulator and like is proper serious about it.
Yeah, good. I mean, can you get a cockpit for that sort of stuff? I know, you can spend tens of thousands of dollars on racing sims, and I think the plane, flying sims is the same. You get a $10,000 farm simulator with like the suspension
chair and a big joystick and maybe some screens and do you reckon it'd come with a cup holder for your coffee?
Logitech used to make one. I don't know if it's still, like, it was a few years ago where it was around. They got one. Hang on. Farming Simulator. That's so funny. Yeah, you're
anyway.
I'll bring up a picture of it because it is pretty funny.
Can you put a lame sheep on your lap or something that you're giving a lift to the other side of the paddock? I mean, how far into can we get?
Can you imagine the forums for that? Like how to calculate the right weight?
A kelpie and stuff.
Promise you, Alastair, we didn't invite you on just to discuss farm simulator.
Oh no, as I said, so thank to Luke. I mean, we could do the whole podcast without talking about photography. Like, I could,
yeah.
Man.
That being said, though, I think one of the most fun things I've ever driven is an excavator. Like, and at that point, I'd driven a few fast things, but yeah, the sense of power that you get out of a mechanical arm with seemingly no limitations. Like, I was in this cabin and I was yelling with power, like, oh! And I was tossing this tractor tire around like it was nothing. And I think if you were to broadcast that, people would probably put me in an asylum. But the feeling that I got out of that was just, I mean, no sports car could ever do that.
No, and it's. Oh yeah, go. Luke.
No, I was gonna say like I had a similar thing with a Kanga, like those little ride-on ones. So those little like ride-on buckety things. I did some paving and I hired one of those instead of doing digging and leveling. I just spent like 2 or 3 hours before I actually started doing work, just shoveling dirt around. I was like, I can fix that, yes. And then, can I drive over this dirt? Yes, I can.
And the precision, like, because it's all pneumatic. The precision is just, you can. I've seen people like flip coins just on the bucket that they've dragged around the bottom, and it's I'm like, I could definitely do a 40-ton JCB. That'd be
funny. You say the sense of power. I read a thing I saw on Facebook the other day about a guy basically in the States who had a muffler shop, and it was the whole council thing. They authorized to build a concrete factory next door, but that meant basically killing his business because they cut off his water supply and they turned the main access road to his business into a sort of a closed construction, basically ruined this guy's business, and they wanted nothing to do with no compensation or anything. So he acquired a big bulldozer, and over the course of 6 or 8 months, armor plated this bulldozer.
Oh, I remember seeing that.
And then went on a rampage and apparently destroyed the councilors' houses, the concrete factory, the council station, straight through it. It's the way to handle your problems, really. Just and
that's some consumer advice from Andrew there. Thank you for tuning into the Sports Car
Safari podcast. Heavy equipment.
Be for the council. Perhaps plate your tractor with some bulletproof steel. Go on a rampage.
And next week on the podcast, Apocalypse. Are you ready?
Really though? Really are you?
Alastair, if I'm not mistaken, is equipment trader as part of the Bauer portfolio that, along with Unique Cars, there's some sort of farm machinery trade publication. So maybe you can hook us up with maybe I've got that completely wrong, but that used to be back in the day.
Machinery?
Deals on wheels.
Deals on wheels.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway,
but,
let's maybe segue back into photography for a moment. So
we have to.
Why don't you give us a rundown of how? Because I mean, there can't be that many people in Australia doing your job, working as a full-time photographer. I just want to find out, I guess, first what it feels like to walk into any sort of, petrol station or news agent and see your work on the cover of, the most popular magazines in the country. And then how does that happen? How did it happen for you?
It is really good. And I mean, it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. So there's also that it's not something that I fell into. I mean, you get lucky, but it's something that I've been aiming for ages. So to see that, and definitely the first time you get a cover and you see it in a supermarket or something, and no one else knows or cares because everyone's got their own problems. But I'm just looking at this shelf in this set, going, that was me. It's quite fun, I think. And I don't take it for granted because I'm acutely aware that my job is quite an outlier in Australia. There's a lot of boys and girls who like cars, and there's a lot of boys and girls with cameras, and they sort of combine the two and they do a great job. But there aren't too many outlets that are offering full-time employment to do as such. And so if ever I'm having a bad day, I just remind myself of that, and I'm just like, it could be a lot worse in terms of doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah. That's so yeah, how did it happen for you? Where did you start? Did you sort of start trackside and at events as a hobbyist and kind of turned it into a career, or did you go in sort of with a professional mindset from day one?
No, I mean a bit of column A and a bit of column B. It's interesting. I did start from motorsport, and that's basically because that was the only place I could do panning and stuff like that. And I quickly found that once you learn how to pan, it was an absolute waste. Is that my noise? Someone's noise?
No, we're good.
No, we're good. I can't hear anything.
I can't hear anything. So yeah.
Sorry, I got a bong. Sorry. Not that type.
It's Elon Musk on Joe Rogan, isn't it?
And humans enjoy this, do they? I shall enjoy as well. No, I think I was actually leaning on that, so I'll just put that over there. So yeah, I went to track events at Eastern Creek and stuff, and yeah, to learn technique and also to be around cars, because I didn't have too many cars around when I was growing up. My dad says he was a petrol head, and I guess he did like them, but he didn't spend silly money on them. And we didn't really have cars and coffee back then. I didn't have a license, so really going to the racetrack was the only place I could go to see cars. And yeah, once you learn how to pan and all that sort of technique stuff, I sort of started looking at the pit lane, because I felt that there was so much more activity and there was so much more avenue for a good shot in the pit lane, and especially what people were doing rather than the cars themselves. So yeah, fast forward to uni, and I basically threw the car stuff away, because the uni was great, but from the outside I just thought, you're not going to win any friends by talking about cars. None of the people in your photography class care about cars, so why don't we just leave that off to the side, get your degree and go back to it. And
what did you study?
Photography.
Yep.
And then also I didn't have enough of uni. I quite enjoyed it, so I then did graphic design afterwards, because I sort of knew I could work that into to print media and presenting myself, and I think it's a good sort of double-edged sword. So yeah, but yeah, halfway through uni, I was just losing drive, and I was just shooting whatever, and it wasn't really showing through. And I thought, well, look, let's just go back to a track and shoot some cars, and maybe give that to the lecturer and see what they think. And yeah, it was an absolute hit. And so I just shot cars for my final year, and that was it. And it definitely was the people aspect of the track. But it's an interesting thing, because yeah, I always saw track photography as like the linear way to start shooting cars. I don't know how there was going to be that jump from motorsport to editorial, but that's where I thought it was. And I feel like when I go back to track events now, I've illegally jumped a few steps, because I see people that were doing motorsport photography extremely good then and extremely good now, and maybe I just read it as them wanting to move off into something else, but I think probably they're great as motorsport photographers and they're happy being so. But I feel like there was a step that I missed, that I just janked out of nowhere, I guess. So yeah, I mean, I then worked at the newspaper in Wagga when I was studying there. The Daily Advertiser. It was good fun. And I met the motoring editor there, who turned into a good friend. He's now my housemate, because he then got a job at Motor at the time. And he then gave me the heads up that there was a job going for a photographer, and I was like, get me there. I need to go. I need to get into that office. And at the time I was working in Sydney, and I wasn't really enjoying my job too much. So yeah, it was amazing to come down to Melbourne, and yeah, it's so amazing how close to my expectations it is, really.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's interesting you talk about the motorsport as the pathway to kind of car photography, because
that could be just a personal thing. I don't know.
No.
I don't want to offend anyone who's a really good motorsport photographer and is happy to be there.
I would agree.
I would agree with that too. And that's like the point is that a lot of people go and shoot motorsport but miss that whole, I guess, editorial side. And I guess for Andrew and I going and shooting stuff for Sportscar Safari, you it's a totally different element. Like the element of rocking up to a track and just shooting whoever's cars and no one caring, to having to manage the people side as well as the car side and the location side. Like with motorsport photography, it's like you're there. You just rock up.
Yeah.
There's going to be cars. There's going to be a location.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk to anyone if you don't want to.
No.
And off you go.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that stepping progression to doing editorial work is, it's like a different kettle of fish altogether.
It is. There's no other way.
The same, but
there's no other way you can sort of lean into it though. I mean, you don't do my first Fisher Paykel, my first car shoot, as a toddler. Like at one point, someone presents their car. They've probably spent either a lot of money on it or they're taking time out of their day to give you the car, and you've either got to do some sort of job. And I think I was very concerned about that as a child, going, I don't want to put anyone out for their day, and I don't want to. They're a well-to-do person. They've got a nice car. They don't want to do with me.
Yeah.
So I guess
it's interesting you say about the human element of motorsport, because we had Jason Fong on the podcast a few weeks ago, and I don't know if you know Jason, but Jason sort of said the same thing, that he shoots a lot of motorsport for Goodwood and whatnot over here, but the pit lane is what he loves doing the most, and not really capturing the cars. It's about that element. But Luke's point about when you're doing those editorial shoots, really turning up and pushing the shutter button is just the last of a very long set of jobs to sort of make that happen. So how much of that are you now doing? Like, are you kind of, do they just come to you with a concept, or make this happen, or are you sort of the like the fashion photographer who turns up and just presses the button and it all happens for you?
I've just been a director's chair all day. No, it vastly depends on the job, the magazine, the editor's trust in what I'm doing that day, and also how many pages it is. So I wish every shoot that I do is an absolute clutch at heroic imagery, where I've got 3 days to mull things over and waiting for some sunset, but half the time it's like, oh, we need a 2-page first drive of this, and we'll use this as a tracking car, and we're taking this because we also need a 2-page first drive of that, and do this in. So I mean, for that stuff, I'm just like, I'm totally fine taking the back seat and go, you pick a location. What works. So the editors and the journalists sort of are on the same page. Everyone sort of mucks in with that sort of stuff. But for for the bigger stuff, I've got a bit of a say. Sometimes, not too much. But at the same time, when I get there, every single bit of creativity is up to me, really. There's no brief into what things need to look like usually. So, I mean, I usually have a chat with the journalist or the editor about where we're taking the car, and from that, it's just in the back of my head. I either know what I'm doing or I know how I'm going to do it, or if there's also some sort of underlying story or reason as to why we're there, either props or color photos in terms of, building story when we're out there, and how the car fits into that. And I think that's my favorite type of shoot is the real story stuff. And I wish I did more of it at the moment. But that stuff's really cool.
Yeah, I guess, and Street Machine would be a totally different kettle of fish to that altogether.
Street Machine,
you're not getting a hot rod from a manufacturer and some journalist going and fanging it around, no problem.
So Street Machine is Street Machine's different from Wheels, is different from Moto, is different from so Street Machine. You deliver a lot less photos, but those photos are of a huge quality, and that's because the people who've built those cars have spent inordinate amounts of money on building them, and they've probably pulled out a lot of stops in terms of getting you to shoot it either at a mate's shed or sometimes I've had people either organize locations or pay for locations. So there's a real emphasis on getting a good job out of it. But it's I've got a thing with Street Machine shoots, a bit like studio shoots, which they're not my absolute favorite. I try to do them to the best of my ability, but when you've got a studio situation, it basically means that every single pixel in that photo is intentional, and there's nowhere to hide. And I quite like the environmental aspect of a lot of photos, which you don't get with studio stuff, and it's harder to get with Street Machine stuff. So it's you definitely tackle them differently than say a wheel shoot or a unique cars shoot or a 4x4 shoot.
Because I guess with those street machine shoots, like a lot of guys that build those cars, getting a magazine feature is a major box to tick. You know, they have the concept, they build the car,
They
then
go to shows, they tour.
go to shows, they tour it, they don't drive it and then once they've had the street machine feature in the shows, then they can actually start and enjoy the car and use it, and then they probably sell it and build the next one. So you're a very integral part of that whole process.
One of my favorite things that happens, and it happens quite a lot with street machine owners, is they see an unknown number come up on their phone and they answer it and they act all tough and, you know, very professional, well, either professional or tough, one of the two. Yeah. And it's just little old me on the other end of the line. And as soon as I say I'm from Street Machine and I'm there to shoot their car, a different character altogether. They're like, oh yeah, sure. Where do you want it? What time? I can do 3 a.m. if you want.
So funny people like that. My partner is a vet, and she says the same thing, that you get these big sort of tough guys that bring their bulldogs in, and as soon as there's anything sort of remotely wrong with the dog, they're tearing up. Whatever you need to do, like I'll give it. You know, yeah. It's probably the same with
liver
the cars,
transplant. I'll give it my liver.
I'll give it. Yeah, but as soon as you no, that's interesting. So no, it's cool to hear. So, but I mean, I can only imagine the sort of the wheel stuff where you're heading out on a group test or Picotti with a group of sort of supercars and tearing out for a few days in the countryside must just be absolutely living the dream.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things that I constantly have to deal with is this switch that's an internal mental switch where I just see it as work and it's very cutthroat, and I see cars as cars and I just shoot them from the angles that they look good and that's it. And when I switch out of that switch, my petrol head comes back on, and I am an absolute tragic petrol head. And the one that I really remember was when I was the GT2 RS at the top of Mount Mackay, and we just trekked up, I don't know, 10 Ks of dirt road, thinking that we might make it to the top of this mountain, and then we got snowed up at the there it is. God, he's good. Look at how smooth that was.
I'm on it. Didn't even make a mention of it.
I was no doubt that I was dealing with professionals. This is amazing.
Episode 12 got it locked down.
We're there. So for our audio, and look, we're even going to describe the image for our audio only listeners, which is something we're working on. So we've got a beautiful red GT3 RS rule of two. Sorry, two. My bad. There goes the professionalism. 2 RS rule of thirds on a beautiful sort of dirt track facing downhill. Crystal blue skies, but snow everywhere, and obviously it's at the sort of snow line of the mountain, and it's just kind of parking there purposefully. It's a beautiful shot. That's
thank you very much. Wall.
So very cool.
So it was basically, I mean, I was stressed that day because we got there the night before and the road that we wanted to go on was closed. And so the whole morning was very focused on, oh my God, how's it going to work? We've just driven all this way in this car. We can't, we've put the miles on it. We bloody well need to, get something out of it. And
you can't just open the roads. Like, you don't just have this like magic wand that like, we're here to shoot. Open.
I mean, I know
Heaven's
that
open. Moses comes and parts the Red Sea, and you go through. No,
I'm from Wheels. Have you heard of us?
I know I come across and act like an absolute big shot. I understand this, but sadly not. I'm just a mere mortal human, and sometimes even less, according to Logan. I was focused so much on getting shots out of that and building color, and the story had changed at that point because we were going to do Falls Creek. It looks amazing. It was going to be this whole thing originally, and harking back into this other story because this is a good segue. This shoot was supposed to be at Lake Mountain for one day. And as soon as I caught wind of that, I said, ring up Porsche, see if we can get it for another day. We need to take that somewhere special because that's a sick car. Yeah. And sadly, Victoria is quite good for driving roads, but it's not as amazing as Europe. And so that was the creme de la creme within striking distance. And so it based all of this effort on going on this certain road that was closed. And
Dropped out for a second. Well, we'll keep going, Luke. In the meantime, let's have while we work out what's happening with Alastair. He might just need to refresh or something like that.
Yeah, we'll see.
We're actually going to print this week. We might as well give a quick update as to issue 3, just a quick segue, and then hopefully we can get Alastair back on. So we're pretty much printing almost as we speak. So hopefully in the next kind of week we'll have the magazine ready to get out there, which is very exciting. And we've been talking about it for a bloody long time. But
so the plan is that all things going well, Cars and Coffee Unli will be on the 21st, and we will have the magazine there to give out, which would be pretty cool. Hoping that printers get everything done. I've been speaking with the printers. They're making the plates at the moment and then going to stock. Actually, it's quite interesting, that whole back end thing behind it. There's been quite a bit of a change with the paper supply industry, and there's not much stock being held in Adelaide at the moment. So a lot of the wholesalers and suppliers, it's this whole other crazy world that you just, everyone goes, paper, whatever, you just get it.
You just get paper.
It has to be shipped in from Melbourne, actually. So it's the printers were complaining that, in the last kind of 6 months or so, it's been very difficult in terms of timelines and getting stuff done quickly. Adds another 4 or 5 days to the process. So so pretty excited. We did the final proof and the rip and stuff the other day, so looking excited. What else is happening on Sports Cars? I got a whole bunch of the
merch. The jumpers, the merch, the new logo. So we'll debut that shortly.
Yeah, we've been tinkering away on trying to come up with a new little design that kind of harks back to our hashtag that we do a little bit, which is the road awaits, and kind of, I think, really encompasses what Sports Car Safari is about, and that's getting out on the road and driving and enjoying. To be fair,
I mean, Alastair has, hopefully he's going to jump back in shortly, but that picture of the GT2 RS that's parked there pretty much encapsulates most of what we want to capture in our logo and merch and whatnot. That's very cool to hear that. So I've got we finalized the design. I'm actually going to do some stickers too, I think.
And we'll cut those up. I reckon I'll probably go tomorrow and try and get some matte grey vinyl, I think. I think that'll look pretty cool.
I still like the reflective idea. Reflective vinyl, as people can get their camera flashes and just punches out, I think would be very cool.
Would that be good on like a road car or just like a race car situation?
Speed cameras, bro. Imagine if you got your speed camera flying from the back and it's just a big flash of the road awaits. That's what we need.
Maybe we could like do them enough that you position them next to the number plate, and it might help out in flashing it out or something.
Could you actually do that? Could you legally cover the rest of the back of your car with reflective area around the number plate so that if it flashed, it blinded the reflect? That would be illegal?
It won't blind it enough. They're actually using like infrared flashes now as well. So it makes it a lot more difficult to try and do that stuff. But maybe a reflective. I don't know, like a white reflective, or
I think the good reflectives don't look reflective unless they reflect, if that makes sense. So it just looks white or grey. It doesn't really look anything different.
Remember the big thing with vinyls back in the day was like the chrome vinyl.
Oh, mate.
Remember? I had like exhaust technology chrome vinyls coming out of everywhere.
Do you remember the Auto Salon magazine drift car, Fernando wheel, the S15, the whole thing, chrome vinyl wrap?
That was late 2000s or mid to late 2000s peak chrome, wasn't it?
Yep. Rad. As rad as it gets. So
we don't really see much of that wrapping side of stuff in Adelaide, really, though. Like, we see a little bit here and there and race car stuff, but when I lived in Sydney, that whole culture is totally different. Like in Sydney, people just do whatever they want. They don't care. Like they just, you know what, I like it. So get lost. London.
Mate.
MX5 Club London.
No, dude. Where the rap game is strong over here, it's your 10-year-old supercars. You've got your 10-year-old Gallardos, Rolls-Royce Phantoms, like all of that sort of just sort of second tier type stuff.
Yeah.
Wrap it in your blue, your pink vinyls. The interesting one I saw last year on an Aventador SV was a Swarovski crystal wrap, and I don't know if it was real crystals or not, but this whole thing was covered head to tail in like diamante type crystals. It was a beautiful thing. I actually saw it being pulled over by the police for excessive noise. It was a case of when something is such a train wreck that you just have to salute it. You're like, this is just so bad that I can't even be upset. Like, this is amazing, like it's.
And that is why you like Italian cars. I don't care if it's a train wreck and it never works and it's smelly and the doors don't open and this. It's so good at that. I love it. I heard back. Oh my God. He's so good.
We've got Alastair trying his hardest to get back in. So we've got some hey, Chris Harvey commented that chrome vinyl weighed heaps, actually. Yeah, that's a true point. Erebus saved kilos when they stripped the SLS GT3 of it. That's actually a really good point. Wow. I didn't. Yeah, but actually, to be fair, probably makes a fair bit of sense.
Well, there'd have to be quite a bit on there to support that kind of pigment, I guess. It's not like it's like a white or a color or something you could have quite thin and get away with it.
Yeah.
I guess it's still lighter than painting, though.
Chrome.
Well, like wrap and chrome effect, probably.
Because I reckon a lot of the Formula One teams have looked into that, changing colors of the Formula One cars based on the weight of paints and the pigments in them to get that kind of, especially the sort of the shadow finish. Which, that's.
But I guess it doesn't matter so much in F1, and I don't know about like the SLS GT3 rules and stuff like that. I guess there's balance of power, so you kind of every bit you can save with stuff like that you can. But like with F1, they got minimum weights anyway, so it's just part of the overall equation of the engineering of like, okay, we do this, that's what it weighs. Okay, we do this, we can do this, and there's obviously sponsorship would drive that quite heavily as well.
No, exactly. So.
I think. Yeah, one of those. Yeah, maybe that does. It'd be interesting actually to speak to someone in F1 about that. How much of an impact that actually has.
I think we're interestingly, while we're talking Formula One, going to see quite an interesting shift lately. I noticed that Mercedes, I'm about 10 years too late, Petronas AMG F1 are testing at Silverstone today, literally today, for how they're going to sort of implement the new post, COVID rules around social distancing and face masks. And there's some fascinating photos that come out of, showing Valtteri Bottas testing, and the engineers are wearing proper sort of shadow face guards and whatnot. So I think it's going to be probably certainly one of the most interesting seasons of Formula One.
Well, I mean, there's numbers down. We were talking. I was reading some articles about how the numbers of crew that they're taking to events and stuff will be down, and so it'll be interesting for the sport in terms of looking at that overall budget cap as well. Because I mean, as one of the most expensive things that you have inside of a business is your HR costs, your cost of people paying salaries. So that's obviously where you can save some money. It'd be interesting during this period to see how they run with less staff at the tracks. I think it's going to be interesting because I think across a lot of businesses at the moment, I think a lot of businesses have had to adapt to, overnight they've had to move to not working in offices and having less people. And they've kind of, I think it's going to be rather interesting because they've kind of all sort of realized that, hey, the world doesn't crash when we don't have our full team together every day and these types of things happen. So I think this season, I think it's probably going to help that budget cap because I think Formula One will have no option but to just cope and work out how to survive with fewer people and fewer crew members, which I think will help sort of implement those budget caps going forward. Obviously, it does kind of suck for the people that are working and lost their jobs. So that's not a great thing. But hoping the people that have that are kind of, I guess, have the ability to cross over into, you know, I think we spoke the other night, Andrew, about emerging technologies and, you know, electrification and all these little businesses popping up that are doing this kind of work that would probably benefit from having someone with experience in F1 and composites and manufacturing and design and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that those people who might be affected by budget caps can find work in other parts of the industry and other parts of manufacturing and stuff.
It's interesting enough. You know, I've got some friends that have actually been working in some of the ventilator projects that are happening here, where they've you know, reverse engineered these ventilators, and it's sort of been reported quite, you know, widely in the media. You've got these different organizations coming together to, you know, each bring their different skills, and the Formula One teams, from what I understand, the Formula One teams have really brought a sense of urgency and a sense of speed. They just these crew members, even on a project that has nothing to do with Formula One, they're just used to being resourceful and getting things done and making changes and implementing them. And if something has to happen, it has to happen yesterday, not in 3 weeks time. And so I think naturally those people that are just accustomed to working in that manner will find, I think, you know, any sort of engineering type high-tech business would need those skills. So I think
I'm probably appreciative of those skills too. Like, I can imagine a hard thing for a startup is timelines and trying to get product out in time and not blowing out. You know, we got this great idea, you're working on it, you're doing prototypes, you're trying to deliver a product to a customer, and you just, that having someone with that work ethic and that experience in the background would probably be really, really handy for them. But actually, I'm kind of glad they didn't do the whole reverse grid thing though. Like,
oh no, that could have.
Can you imagine? You know, there's like, you know, there's Williams up the front, and they're just trying to hold their position to get some form of points for their championship, and just end up in crashes. And because whenever you go karting, reverse grids always work so well.
Well, it's good fun, but
it's good fun bashing people out of the way when you're coming through.
It kind of, it's that element of artificial racing. It's more of a philosophical debate, I think, around whether you think you know, whether you think what Formula One is it entertainment, at which case then maybe a reverse grid race might be something that you'd want to see. But I guess if it's supposed to be the pinnacle of motorsport and you know, and that kind of, you know, the elite and the best of the best, and it's like, you know, a few pundits have said, you know, okay, Formula One tends to have its teams that dominate. You know, obviously Ferrari and Schumacher in the 90s, and, you know, AMG Petronas now. But it's like the reason that happens is because they are the best. Like it's not an accident. You know, they have the best drivers, they have the best engineers, the best processes, workflows. You know, that the whole works. And it's like, well, as much as it doesn't always make for interesting racing, that's kind of what Formula One is. It's a place for the cream to rise to the top, and you know, and if one team is just so much better than everyone else, it kind of makes sense. So
well, I guess it's like, it's one of those things where you look at like the corporate world and you go like, you know, you don't put restrictions on Amazon just because they're winning. Like, it needs to be fair for everyone now. Like, you know, it's interesting that it comes in. But I think we have Alastair ready to come back in.
Oh, amazing!
I see him there. Hang on, he's not in yet. We shall bring him in now.
As much as we've loved chatting about everything,
shall bring him in? Let's bring him in awkwardly while he's fixing himself up.
Yeah, great. I know.
Oh, there he is.
Hey! Somehow, somewhere, the powers that be decided that particular MacBook Pro didn't want to play ball. But
we are back.
You've always got another computer.
Always have a spare.
It's all good. I can't show you any of the photos that I got on file now because this one is now perched on top of the other MacBook, and we're on a slightly dodgy connection. But I do apologize to all of your listeners and all of your viewers.
I think what we'll do. Obviously, thank you for those who've stuck with us on the live stream. I think for the audio version that we upload to Apple and Spotify, we might slice a bit of idle banter out the middle and sort of join you together.
It's probably better than this camera's so dull. This is a direct comparison between a 2012 and a 2017 MacBook. There you go.
Well, there we go. Tech reviews.
And I'm using this mouse, which isn't even connected. I've been trying to use the
Why is not working?
Okay.
Yeah.
Hit it harder.
I can drive this thing. That's fine. I can do that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, we're good.
Everything's fine. Everything's fantastic.
Okay.
Well,
it just looks
let's
like,
pick up.
pick up where we're going.
Pick up where we left off. GT2 RS, walking 10 kilometers up a snowy little road. So.
Okay, so what I was trying to get with that terribly convoluted story is this idea of switching on your petrol head and then switching on your work brain. And yeah, I'd spend all of the second morning trying to get some shots and trying to get some color. And geez, I'm still burping as well. And I basically trekked up this final bit of the mountain and I saw the car there, and my car person just came out and I just lost it for like 15 minutes. I couldn't do anything. I was just gushing. I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, that's like Switzerland. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I mean, who on earth in their right mind would put a G2 there? And yeah, it's that sort of stuff that I'd like to do more often, but it's not the most productive approach. You've got to really, I mean, there are so many times where I could gush about the car and look at all the details, and then not get any work, and it's not productive. So there's definitely a balance. You've got to get the job, and you've got to shoot some, or you're a car absolute petrol head, and you enjoy yourself. And try even to this day, I'm a battery in those things.
It's interesting that we were talking. Jason Fong sort of mentioned a similar thing when he.
I'm here. What do you?
Yep. No, we've got you a little bit. I think we might have dropped Alastair again, but yeah, Jason Fong was sort of, for those that caught, about sort of being a professional and taking the moment to kind of appreciate and enjoy. I think Jason mentioned a similar thing where when he was at Le Mans shooting, and how it's really important to kind of just take a moment to sort of appreciate where he is. And if you're on the Mulsanne at sort of 3-4 in the morning and you've got a job to do, but just to take a minute or two out to sort of go, actually, this is pretty cool. So yeah
it's definitely like that. And it's hitting at a nerve when you mention that, because I was supposed to be over there this year doing all those all sorts of things. So yeah, it's I will try and this is the internet we're now also dealing with, because the other one was probably a bit unstable, which is why we're now where we are.
So I guess while Alastair and Luke attempt to troubleshoot, I think we've got some slow internet, but I think Alastair's meant to actually be over here in the UK and Europe at the moment. Had quite an elaborate trip planned, which was going to see him sort of go to the Nürburgring and of course to the Le Mans 24-hour, which was supposed to be on at the moment this weekend actually, and have would have been what was quite a sort of a groundbreaking trip plan, which obviously, like everything, has had to sort of be cancelled thanks to the virus situation. So he's, I guess, not salty at all that he's not at Le Mans as we speak. So it's probably a bit of a bad time to bring that out. So I think we're just doing some troubleshooting where you go.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where I guess everyone's not doing it, so it's not so bad.
Okay, we've just got Alastair changing his internet connection, and I think we've lost Luke as well. So it's just me here for the time being. Radio SCS heading out. I guess this is the beautiful thing about technology at the moment. Everyone working out how this stuff works.
I've got you back now. You got me?
Yeah, I got Luke. Yeah, we're good. We're good. I don't have video though. No video.
That's all right. I'll sort that out in a sec. I'll hide myself off for a minute. You can talk amongst yourself.
Yeah, talk amongst myself. This is what Well, I guess interestingly, it is interesting for a bit of an update about the motorsport situation here in Europe. There's a big championship called Historic Masters. They've announced that they are going back to racing next month. So I think on the 18th and 19th of July, they're having their first race meeting behind closed doors, unfortunately. So that's a round of the FIA Historic Formula One Championship and their usual sort of saloon cars and sports cars and whatnot. So yeah, they're going back behind closed doors. Obviously, the major events where there's lots of spectators are all still off. A few Concours events, interestingly, are back on. London Concours announced August dates, and interestingly enough, they've sort of announced a bit of how they're going to approach it, which is a lot of social distancing and sort of one-way streets and whatnot. And I think we've got Alastair back now on a different internet connection.
I do apologise. We've now got different laptops and different internet connections. hopefully this is the golden combination.
The golden combination. We're good.
Spurting out.
We're good.
The dribble that I'm spurting out now comes through clean and strong.
So we've got Carl with a quick question in terms of timeline and events in the UK. I think I might have possibly answered that a minute ago, but yeah, first events are happening. Big historic meets are happening next month, but no spectators behind closed doors, limited numbers of people, lots of sort of social distancing and things like that. So we are starting to see it come on, but I think it'll be a while until we can actually go and sort of be there ourselves, which is, I guess a bit of a shame. So I guess we can let's take 3 GT2 RS. You're at the point where you need to pick up the camera and do some work. You're marveling at this amazing car parked in the snow.
Yeah, I mean it's a crazy thing, that car. It really is, and I'm extremely privileged to say that I've been in a GT3 as well, and that thing is GT3 fast, and then the turbos come in, and it's just this absolute shunt. And so yeah, the day and a half before that was very fun, and I think the big thing for me is at that time there was only one silver press car, and so as soon as I was told that it was the GT2 shoot, I was like, okay, it's going to be silver, it's going to be the same color as everyone else, and it's going to look relatively the same. And so it was funny actually, we drove to the Porsche dealership to pick up the car, but we handed in a GT3 Touring to replace it with. Yeah, it was a good run at the time for press cars, and we got it. And this thing came around the corner. It was red with a Visac pack, and I was like, okay, it's something a bit different. That's good. And I had the lightweight wheels as well. So that was really nice. It was a good shoot. It was probably still a highlight because I try and take good photos, but just it was so fun to do. And Andy Enright, the journalist who's also deputy editor for Wheels Magazone, is such an amazing person, and he is so accomplished with what he's done. And I think greater than his value of writing an amazing spiel about a car is his anecdotes. You sit down for a pub dinner with him after a shoot, and the sort of stuff that comes out of his mouth, I'm thinking, how on earth has this man survived all of it? And it's all done in a way it's definitely not one-upmanship. He's just lived an amazingly interesting life, and so driving a GT2 for 2 days is normal for him.
Yeah, and I guess it's interesting, for you, pursuing a career in that field is not always that sort of the best paid work, but you do get rewarded quite richly in terms of experience. And I guess that's sort of the, where that ends up is just this incredible bank of anecdotes. And
where I saw it at uni was you've got either a path to, there was X amount of stuff that you get out of life, and you either spend it all on making money and not perhaps enjoying what you do so much, or it's the other way around. I don't think I'm good enough to make lots of money and be sensible all the time. So I think I was sort of destined to faff around and sort of make do. I think that's probably what I was always doing. But yeah, one of the first thoughts.
Okay, he's gone again.
Back to us.
Wow. What do you reckon? How are we doing here? Do we?
No, we're all good.
We've got some.
We'll be good. We'll get
Keep
back.
going again.
Yeah, we can keep talking for a bit. I'm sure he'll come back in a sec.
Maybe I should pick a book or a novel off my shelf and start reading.
Thursday night readings by Andrew. That would be a pretty funny thing.
Actually, the double annoying part of this is I was really, really enjoying what Alastair had to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. So he's saying that he can see and hear us. So yeah, interesting. As I said, you're witnessing the joys of this technology sort of firsthand. That it's yeah, and we might edit this up for the Apple Podcast and Spotify version. But yeah, if you do have any questions at the moment until we kind of work out what's going on, yeah, pop them in the chat, and yeah, we'll do our best to answer them. So
yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I guess, and oh, here he is. He should be back now. I just asked him to refresh his page. Just that
cool.
old Mac life. We'll see if he comes back in. Maybe.
No,
disappeared again.
We're working on it. So obviously, this is all browser-based software that we use to do the podcasts, and yeah, it works on a lot of variables. Really, it relies on a good internet connection and a fast updated computer and all of these things. And if it comes together, we get a show. So
it's actually pretty interesting. Like Alastair was pretty close to the CBD in Melbourne, and it's a funny thing, the internet in Australia, how terrible it is at places. You know, you can be like really close to you know, business and what you think is the hub of everything, and yet feel like you're out in the sticks in the middle of nowhere.
Somewhere.
Actually, the sticks have probably got better internet, actually.
To be fair, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Very much an interesting thing. Yeah, and I guess kind of like talk about COVID and things getting back on it again. Next week on the podcast, we got Tim Possingham.
Mm-hmm.
Should be pretty cool. He's got some events coming back up. I just spoke with Busby, and there's a bit of stuff happening with SA Rally, which is kind of cool. So a bit of gravel stuff happening. They're going to try and run 3 rounds for the SA Championship. So one down in Gambia, and then split the Adelaide Hills Rally into 2 events over the weekend. So
yeah,
that seems like it'll be pretty cool.
So Luke, to speak, because I'm certainly of this case, you go to events and it's all a bit, you know, you get used to it and you kind of, it's another event and it's fun. But, you know, are you really going to really enjoy those first few events back after, you know, we've sort of, we know what we're missing now, and it's, or do you think it's gonna sort of settle back in and it's going to be kind of normal and we'll just go back to normal life pretty quickly?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm more missing people than anything else. I really want to get back and see the people that are involved in motorsport, and you know, the friends that I can't see that you see at car events, which is kind of really exciting. And yeah, just to see something happening and people enjoying themselves and stuff like that would be cool. Would be great. So here we go, bringing him in.
What have we got? Street to Screen Media in the sticks, but the bend is about 10 minutes away. So yeah, that's a pretty good deal.
I mean, one of the most popular cities in Australia, first world country, can't even get internet. I mean, what's going on? And
we were just talking about that.
Built up part of Sydney as well. It's just ridiculous. I mean, how does Manly miss out on internet? How does St Kilda miss out on internet? What's going on?
Yeah. Oh well, back.
We're
Take
good.
4.
Take 4. GT2 RS.
Should we keep talking about the GT2 because it sounds like it's a cursed story?
We can
okay.
I want to know, Alastair, like you said, you're a bit of a car nut and stuff like that. Do you own anything of any interest, or have you owned anything of interest that you enjoy and want to elaborate on, or is it all because of where you are, it's all just media press cars?
No, I wish it was that. No, look, the lowly creatives don't really get access to press cars like the journalists and editors do. Unfortunately, I know the climate's a bit different in other countries, but here, it's basically you need an editorial purpose to drive the car, and that's completely understandable. So I've got French hot hatches, but not out of choice for the French side or the hot hatch side. It's just that both are accomplished drivers' cars. And unfortunately, both do the exact same thing. So I don't know why I've bought essentially the same car twice, just 20 years apart.
So what have you got?
But I've got a Clio 182 Cup, which is my daily, and that's had little things done to it, and it's very fun. And then I've also got a Peugeot 205 GTI.
Beautiful.
Which is also very good fun. And I wish I could buy something else, but I'm too attached, which is a shame, because I see lots of other nice cars that I'd love to own and I can't buy them. So,
yeah. No, that's and how do you find, jumping back into yours? Is there a case of, because you do get to experience these, the best cars on sale today, do you find that diminishes your own cars? Do you feel like the poor cousin a little bit, or do you jump back in yours and go, like the whole thing around this is my car and that makes it special and enjoyable?
I think there's an acid test, and my first car and my only other car I've owned is a SV6 Commodore. And that was a P-Plater car. That was my first car, and that was when I was doing uni in Wagga. And there was definitely that sense of getting out of an Audi RS6 and into my SV6 and being like, ugh. But
it's exactly what it sounds like.
Mark of a really, but it's the mark of a really good car, and probably how much I love them. But no, I don't do that with the Clio or the Peugeot. I've gotten out of McLaren and stuff and back in the Clio, and as soon as you just give it a little pop and the induction noise comes out, and I'm just like, it's got like a short shifter on it, so it's very mechanical, and it's like a bit bolt action, and it's I mean the value that I really place in cars like that is the character, and it's something that you don't get in a lot of new cars, and it's why I'm so bad at assessing new cars, because I can very easily pass things off as characterful. I mean, I'll signal out the Italians, but I mean, a lot of people think that the new 4C is just it's a missed opportunity. But I don't know. I drive that, and I'm just like, this thing is stupid, and that's all I want for a weekend car. I mean, it's got nowhere to put anything. You can't put cup holders. It's got. And I'm thinking, these guys, they've stuck with their conviction that this is a Sunday car.
Yeah.
And they've given me something that I honestly wouldn't want to drive in every day. Whereas you can't conceivably buy a 911 and say, oh, I keep it for the weekends, because you look like an idiot.
Yeah. It's such a
911s used to be a weekender car, and every single sports car has to pander to livability. So you've got M4s and stuff with radar cruise control, and it's great if it's your only car, but it just means there's less Sunday aspect about it. And something like a heavily compromised Fiat 500, which is probably rubbish to drive, but you're just giggling while or a 4C where you've got all these sort of wastegates going on, and you're just like, this is
It's funny you mentioned the Abarth 500, because I rented one. We had one for a road trip a year or so ago. My friend Andy, who was in the first sports car safari, came over he lives in Virginia, and he was going to be in the UK. So we hatched this plan. We're going to get this Abarth 500 and do this sort of road trip up to the Lake District. And the first stint was 5 hours north on the motorway, and there was awful traffic, and Andy was jet lagged as hell. And so I drove the whole thing, and I just couldn't believe that they could make a car so bad. Like it had the Sabelt buckets, which was so uncomfortable. Like, I get lower back pain in old cars after a couple of hours, but you expect it. It's a 30-year-old car, like whatever. But this is a bloody brand new car. And we literally genuinely, we had to stop every 2 or 3 hours and get out and walk around because our backs were so pain sore. It had such a small tank that we had to stop and refuel all the time because it only took 30 liters or something dumb. And it was hard and crashy. And by the time we got to the Lake District, we were like, this is the shittest car in the world. But the second we sort of peeled off the motorway and got onto the twisty roads, I reckon about 3 kilometers down the road, and the both of us were like, nah, this is rad. and it was great.
Exactly.
But it's just the drive back, and I get that element that actually we kind of like the fact that it's not good at everything, like a Golf GTI, a Mark 7 or Mark 8 GTI. They're just so good at everything that you kind of don't really appreciate it. And I see your point there totally. So.
That's an interesting point about modern supercars and stuff, and like the whole making it daily drivable. You know, like McLarens are renowned for their ability to be driven every single day of the week. Have you had, Alastair, anything that's just completely crapped itself on a shoot, like anything modern? Like, you know, you read stories of old car magazines and old photographers and being like, we're out this shoot, and then the Countach lit on fire, and then, you know, stuff like that. Has there been anything oddball?
Yeah, we had an Aventador S Roadster that shut itself, and it was towards the end of the day, and it sounded like, I don't think it's what happened, but it sounded like it swallowed a leaf or something, because I heard something go, and I guess it's that moment where you try and ignore that thing, thinking it's just you, and you're just, you know, stressing about it. But we went up a few extra corners, and it was the moment where me and Scott looked at each other, which I knew that he had then also noticed it. And then the car slowly started losing power, and then the screens came up, and everything to do with the hydraulics or anything liquid came up, and like the lifter and the spoiler, and the thing eventually conked out halfway up Mount Donabuang. And I was terrified. Because Lamborghini, I don't think their press cars are the same as, say, BMW or something, where they're, you know, designated press cars, because the cars cost so much and they're hard to get. I think there's a lot more of the resale, or the company bases that. So I was going, oh my gosh, this $1 million car, and we've broken it. And I got calmed down by the editors who were there with me, and luckily the support car that day was a Range Rover Velar with the supercharged 6 in it. So we were just all huddled in this thing, watching YouTube while we waited for the tow truck. And I was just, I mean, the editors of Motor, Dylan and Scott, they're well-to-do people, and to hear them calling up a tow truck and having to say out the number plate of the car, which was, you know, a wanky Lamborghini, you know, number plate. And then, of course, the tow truck owner comes up, and there's this lime green Aventador S on the side of the road. And he's really he's looking at us weird, because at this point we're taking selfies, because, you know, it's just a day out and it's something fun. And I've got, you know, Dylan doing a slab squat in front of it, which I've got this great photo on my phone. And if you know Dylan, he's like this, he's definitely not the sort of person to do a slab squat, that's for sure. And then there's just the story to tell in the background, where it's like Aventador's just being towed up onto this flatbed. And I think it was fine. I don't know what went wrong. But I'm going to toe the company line that it was fine at the end, I think.
Yeah, computer reset, and it was fixed. Yeah.
Well, the other problem is that the toe ring wasn't in the car, and it should have been. So it should have been velcroed onto the front, and so we were starting to have to find alternative ways to drag it up onto a flatbed. And the worst bit of it was this all happened after hours, and so we had to talk to all of these mechanics who'd gone home for the day, and it was a bad omen, because the mechanic, I think, was called Vito. And I'm thinking, I'd like to veto the whole day, to be honest. But
yeah, I guess.
I mean, apart from that, little electronic gremlins, but usually everything. And we take a lot of precaution in terms of looking after the cars, and you know, assessing whatever surface we're going on, or how we're going to do it, or how we're going to get there. But yeah, there have been times on my shoots, but also other people's shoots, where the odd thing goes awry. But yeah, usually we try and do everything we can to A, behave ourselves, and B, to look after the press cars.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So going back, what's in your gear bag? What do you take to a shoot, in, you know, photography nerdery wise?
Oh my gosh, so I found it.
Got the picture. That's amazing. We have said squat, and said lime green Aventador, and said tow truck.
Can I also point out Can I point out that Dylan is beautifully lit by the headlights of a Range Rover Velar in that. If you're thinking it's HDR, it's not. It's just some serious off-camera flash that was actually, it wasn't unplanned, but I'm happy it was there. It was just like, wow, that photo came out remarkably well. And also, that was Dylan's first slab squat and heels on the ground. Like, he's done it well.
Yeah,
Got to hand it to him.
yeah.
In
That's
terms of slab squat, that's good. That's good.
I hope that was printed. That photo. That's a beautiful bit of color.
No, but yeah, that was the only thing. The car was fine. I should stress.
Yeah.
It just failed to work for the rest of the day.
Failed to proceed.
Yeah,
so good. Sorry,
it was not compatible with an incline.
So yeah,
gear wise, so work has equipment that I use. I grew up being a Nikon person, and that's only because my parents were Nikon people. And whenever I went to the UK on family holidays, I would always steal their film SLR, and that's how I got into Nikons and I got the digital. So, but work uses Canon, so I've got a 5D Mark IV now. It was a Mark III until recently, and a 1D, and then I've got 3 lenses, so the sort of general 16-35, 24-70, and a 70-200. And then in the office, we can also use bigger ones. And then also in our camera bag, we've got 2 speed lights with radio transmitters. And then on top of that, we've got the larger portable Pro Photos if we need to take them. And so there's a few things that we share around, like 50mm primes and stuff. And then there's quite a lot of it that we have ourselves, which is great because the video team that we work alongside usually shares everything. And so if you want to do something, you have to have this discussion instantly, and you can't just nick off and with your own kit and stuff. So I'm very happy that we've got our own stuff. Yeah.
So you shoot mostly on zooms, not on primes.
Look, I mean, if I was doing it as a hobby, or doing it for my own enjoyment, I tend to use prime. So I bought another prime on the back of using it at work for my Nikon when I went to the States, because that's the sort of stuff that I like doing. But it's an interesting thing. It taps into a real point where you get these photographers that make these really creamy photos, and they've got the perfect light and stuff, and they come off as this amazing hero of taking shots. And I don't want to discredit them at all, but in my line of work, you have to not only do that, but also get every single aspect of the car. You got to do interior details, exterior details, engine shots, color and stuff, and not everything can be done on a creamy 1.4. Sometimes you've literally just got to whack out a 24-70 and do a nice wide interior shot or something, and it doesn't. I mean, you don't need that extra crispness of a prime if it gives you the versatility.
Yeah, that's interesting to see, because I know like a lot of the guys over here are just all they have is primes. But yeah, you make that point that a lot of them, if you come back from a day and you've got 5 or 10 keepers that will be used as the publicity material for the event, that's kind of all you need. You don't need to capture everything in such minute detail. So in terms of go on. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, for event stuff, I do a lot of prime. So one of the things that I really enjoy doing at work is World Time Attack, because I don't know why, it's just like my little thing. And for the last couple of times I've done it, I've been the one to go to the editors and say, hey, does anyone want this? I want to go. Yes, go. And so that's when I go around with the prime, because I'm sort of doing my own thing. And then for the action stuff, of course, you do the normal stuff. But so a lot of trackside stuff these days, it's primes. Car Week, it was all I spent this money on this prime, and then I flew all of them over the US, and again I just used one.
What was that? What prime? What's your favorite? What's the go-to?
I mean, well, the go-to is a 50mm 1.4 Sigma Art, because it gets a good result, I think. Bit of chromatic aberration, but That's to be expected. But I just think and I call it the creamy lens, and it's just because everything looks creamy. But then I say it to someone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, and I instantly look like more of an absolute idiot than I usually do. So, but that's part of the path. I'm used to that.
So you mentioned about the pro photos. Do you do much, for sort of if you're shooting a cover, like a static cover or a group test, do you strobe that, or is that kind of, are you sort of more natural light and whatnot, or sort of bounce flashes, and how do you do that?
It goes on a lot of things. It goes on the look that you want. It goes on the color of the car. It goes on the shape of the car. It goes on the amount of light source that you've got. And then also, really importantly these days, on the trend.
Yep.
So when I came into doing this, I stayed away from flash because it was difficult, and Nikon perhaps don't implement their flashes to camera as well as Canon, so it was an absolute ball ache whenever I wanted to do it, and I never got the right results. Whereas Canon, literally just hook it up and you trigger the camera from the flash and you just go around. It's amazing. And so you got into this pattern where you felt, okay, I need a static shot, it needs to be flashed, because it's static for some reason. And more these days, we're seeing a lot of people with the increase of HDR capabilities in their cameras. I'm talking about you, Sony Alpha Bros. A lot of people like to sort of underexpose and then bring up the shadows, and there's a far greater emphasis on, I guess, the reflections down the side of the car than just bashing the whole thing with flash, or nicely dropping flash over the top of it, whatever you want to do. So it really depends on the look, and it really depends on a lot of things. Me and Nathan were shooting that Picotti, which is where the A35 is from, and we wanted to be quite natural with quite a lot of it, and just really make the most of the South Australian sun. So that's definitely natural. But these days it's more of a thing to tell myself. It's like, okay, it's a static shot, you don't need to flash this. You can if you want. Maybe just hit one bit of it. You don't need to whack the whole thing with flash. And that's a very hard thing to tell. It's a very hard thing to tell yourself, but also it's sometimes you have to.
And how much sort of post do you use? Are you one of these guys that sort of very heavily? Because I know, and look, it's, I think the beautiful thing is when you really get into automotive photography and you look at, analyze, everyone has a very different skill set. And I definitely know guys that are sort of definitely bordering on almost the digital art side of things with what they're able to do, and their skills behind the computer are just insane. Like, that's not something I
wish I could be.
Where are you on that? Where are you on that sort of spectrum of, but then I guess a lot of people, probably myself too, I sort of can use the natural light as a crux to sort of say, no, I'm a natural light guy, and it's just because I don't know how to do Photoshop. Where are you on that?
I think I worked through, and this is going to sound so pretentious, my general rules is that I don't really want to add anything that's not there unless absolutely necessary. So I hate adding smoke, I hate adding rain, I hate adding splash or whatever, unless you've actually splashed the car. That's fine. If it's, you don't generate it CGI and then add it. But then also the other thing that I do, especially with grading, is just to build atmosphere. What did it feel like when you were there, and how can you transmit that into a photo? Because cameras, bless them, and I base my whole career on them, so I shouldn't be saying this, but they're pretty dumb.
They're not listening. I think they're not listening. You'll be safe.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi, on the other hand, I could diss the Wi-Fi the whole time and give it some of my mind. But the cameras are very dumb things in the fact that you see these, or maybe your eyes are just increasingly complex, but you see these sights in front of you and everything looks amazingly natural, and then you take a shot, and it's happened to everyone, you take a shot in your camera and either the shadows are just dark or the whites are just blown out, and obviously there's some processing trickery going in your brain to make that image what it is, and it's my job to transmit that into a photo, and also on top of that color it so that it adds the feeling of you being there. I guess that's probably where I'm coming from, but again, that sounds so wanky.
No, it's exactly, and I think it's an interesting point you make that actually, what the camera captures is not what we see with our own eyes, and that's both good and bad. Like a lot of people, are strategic. I think this happens at Goodwood a lot of the time, where you'll get a photo that's amazing and you were there and I was like standing next to the dude who took the photo and you're like, that looks 900 times better than it actually was in real life. But I guess you've raised an interesting point about the flip side of that actually sometimes, particularly I'm thinking harsh sort of midday light with big shadows, actually your eye sees it better than the camera is capturing it. So you do need to work on that to sort of bring it back to what you see. So that's an interesting point there. Do you ever get pressured by editors or people who don't know so much about photography and how it works to sort of say, maybe there's a budgetary constraint or a time or a car constraint, and sort of say, well, we can't take this 488 to XYZ. So can you just put it in there and sort of Photoshop, make it, or are they pretty good with not doing too much of that?
Oh no, they're very good at not doing too much of that. I have done it once before, but that's and I won't say the particular shoot. There was a point that there was an area which was extremely pertinent to the story that we were doing, and we couldn't put a car in there, even though there was lots of space and lots of access to do so. It was a council thing, and so we were allowed to be in there. There was pedestrian access, so I took the photo I needed to, and then went to the car park and I lit the car. And I sort of measured focal distance and I sort of measured where it should be. And it turned out the car was way too small, so I made it bigger anyway. And then I photoshopped it into this DPS, this 2-page spread, so that it looked like the car was where I wanted it to be. And that's about the extent of me doing Photoshop trickery and from a wanting to do, rather than, I guess capable as well. I shouldn't say I'm amazing Photoshopper, but yeah, I try and have everything quite honest in terms of where it was and what it was doing and where we could go with it, I guess.
I guess for less experienced Photoshop people as well, it takes a lot less time to set up the shot correctly than what it does to go back and fix it post.
Yes, talking from experience. Definitely. I'm cursing myself so many times on like the way I've lit something or the way I didn't see something, because you do certain shots where you need to strobe certain things, like interiors or wheels on static shots, and you might have forgotten one, and you're just like, how am I going to do this? And so it's a jigsaw puzzle. You might use a natural light shot that you use for something else, and then just crank up the exposure, and then perhaps put a curves layer on it to get that contrast, and then blend it in a certain way where it looks kind of natural. And then you go back to it three hours later, and it looks so unnatural, and you're just like, oh my god, I got to do it again. I just need to stand back from this. That
3 a.m. deadline, I got to get this finished. And then it's like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, there's been a couple of that, but it also that comes down to how much time you've got to shoot it as well. And so
one thing I'm really liking about, I think it's fantastic about Instagram and especially Instagram stories is a lot of photographers share their behind the scenes sort of workflow. And I saw a really interesting one from Jordan Butters a few weeks ago, and he had a shoot that they'd done where it was a tracking shot. I think it was definitely an E92 M3 and I think an E30 M3 on the track, a tracking shot of the two cars, but they didn't have the two cars there in person. And it was the same thing, double page spread, and they wanted the two cars across. So he sort of shopped the E92 into the track behind the E30.
Yeah,
but it was how to get the wheel rotation of the E92.
You got to jack it up.
Jacked it up, spun the wheel, got the photo, and it was quite interesting to sort of see how.
I haven't done it, but we've done also covers where you have this burnout off, I guess, and you jack the wheel up so the wheel's spinning, and then you add the smoke, so it looks like a burnout. Same with virtual rig shots.
Mm-hmm.
So rig shots are out, even though they're still back in. And so virtual rig is basically, you shoot the landscape, you put the car in, you light the car, and then you've got the way to blur it. But how do you blur those wheels? You can just do a rotational blur, but the calipers behind get blurred as well. So how do you do it? You jack it up, you spin the wheels, you get a few exposures, you put it down,
Yep.
So yeah, it does turn into a massive jigsaw, for piecing these things together and editing them and doing all of that. It is a lot of problem solving. It's probably it's probably just as much problem solving as it is actually doing any sort of artistic flair. So yeah, there's a bit of both in that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So obviously, you sort of alluded to earlier that a lot of the work of a shoot goes in before you even take the button. How does, real magazine work square with, I guess, sort of Instagram work where you can just sort of turn up and take a single photo and post it and it gets a lot of likes, and I guess how much but is there a massive difference in sort of that real heavy editorial work versus the kind of off the cuff sort of social work, or is it kind of one and the same?
I think so, because as I said before, you've got to check boxes. You could spend a quarter to maybe half of your day being the absolute artistic hero and getting those creamy shots to make yourself look good as much as the magazine, and that it's going to be Instagram clout and it's going to be amazing. But you've then got to get backseat shots, and you've then got to get details on steering wheels and stuff, and no one wants to see that, or boot shots or anything like that. So yeah, you definitely can't just say jobs are good and when you get 20 odd good shots, because they're probably only going to use between 20 and 40 photos, but you've just got the same bit of road because the light's amazing, and you've got but you can't do that. And that's why I started doing slideshows on my Instagram posts, because I started just putting up hero shots, and it was great. It was great. But you'd look at my feed and it's just, either tracking shots or static shots of cars. And it doesn't actually really show even a fraction of what I do, because it's the B-roll stuff that really builds the story. It's the sort of blurry car past the shop front. It's the sort of, funny thing that you see. It's the sort of locals that you get involved. It's the outside world interacting with that car. And it's not a hero shot itself, but it's something that needs to be shown in conjunction with the hero shot to build a story.
So is that something, I guess, some advice you'd give to upcoming people who want to perhaps take your job is that if you're sort of pitching yourself as a photographer, you need to pitch more than just that hero headline shot that everyone goes, wow, it's really, you're going to impress an editor by having that sort of solid backup of backseat stuff that no one ever takes photos of, and sort of showing you could do that well too.
Please don't take my job, someone. So the application process when I got in was heavily based on this assessment that we were given last minute, and it was last minute for a reason, because it was testing your ability to problem solve, get the thing done and deliver within a certain time, because that happens. And there were two projects. There was one where you had to shoot a car and give 10 photos and show motion and stuff, and basically testing your technical ability and how you shoot a car. The other side was a person and how you shoot the person. And it was apparently, and I'm still trying to get all the shots from other applicants, and I still haven't got it from Ellen, my boss, even though I've been trying, because I want to see what the other people did. But apparently it was probably my portrait stuff, even though I thought my car stuff was really good. It was the fact that my portrait stuff was strong was why I was heavily considered. And I'm thanking my time from the newspaper because of that. I sort of knew at the time that it was a thing, because not everything's about cars. You have to go and shoot, Mark Scaife for talking about something, or there's a changing of hands at the CEO of Ford, or Horatio Pagani's in town, and all of a sudden it's a portrait job, not a car job. And so you have to deliver that. And if you're fresh out of ideas because you've spent all of your time isolating a wheel and you don't know how to shoot a portrait, your job's only 70% done. And so I guess you've got to show a real breadth of what you're able to shoot and how you're able to shoot it, on top of being okay at shooting cars. But apparently they let me in, so you only have to be okay.
I guess it's one of those things where as a full-time employee, it's totally different to doing contract work, where you traditionally get contracted for your strengths, not for your weaknesses. So, you know, you're the go and get this photo.
Yeah, it is. And you know, everyone's got strengths, and everyone's got weaknesses, and you know, if you're lucky, work will know that and avoid your weaknesses and just work on your strengths. But yeah, I mean, I'm employed to do what I'm doing. It's in my job description, so they've got every reason to ask me to do portrait stuff or this or that or anything else. It's all part of the game. Yeah. So yeah, definitely atmosphere. Definitely. That being said, don't just do anything but cars. Like, cars are still part of it. We've had people do a lot of really polished, like, streetscape stuff. And understandably, they didn't have any cars because they haven't got access to it, and I totally understand that. But we can't, you know, give you a gig based just on streetscape stuff. Yeah. So, that's that Archon shoot was really interesting.
Why the yellow?
So that was a artist. Well, first of all, it's the color. It's the Renault racing colors, the yellow and black. And I was thinking of monochrome. It's really quite interesting. I think it said in the blurb there, actually. I edited these and I actually delivered them like normal looking photos. But I always had this in the back of my mind. And so I delivered them like normal photos, and Felipe, the designer for Wheels, obviously had a similar idea, because in the magazine it's actually grayscale with yellow selective color, which is interesting because I didn't talk to him about that at all. It just happened, and I'm like, that's kind of crazy that we both had the same idea.
So for those, just to interrupt quickly, for those on the audio only, we've got sort of, like what would be a grayscale image, but with a very yellow tint over there. So obviously your shadows are real black and everything else is yellow, which gives you those sort of Renault racing Formula One shots. And we've got Daniel Ricciardo and Esteban Ocon at Albert Park, you know, just before the Grand Prix that didn't happen. So sorry, just to jump in. I elbowed Ocon,
I've elbowed him. Yeah, well, we couldn't shake hands at the time. Like, that was like the first day where we couldn't shake hands. So I elbowed Ocon. That's how we did it. And he signed my Clio's engine cover, which is still on the shelf over there.
Very cool. Perks of the job.
Sadly, couldn't get it to Ricardo, but in hindsight, it's probably not the worst thing because he never actually raced for them.
Yeah. You can just take your McLaren cover to him. Don't worry.
Yeah, we can get your McLaren.
If and when. I mean,
get your 675 LT cover.
So this job, we had 15 minutes with him, and Alex, the editor, wanted an 8-page feature out of it.
Whoa!
And then we were told that we had 6 minutes with him. and I really quite like these jobs because you can't look bad coming out of them, which is a terrible thing to say, but you either do an amazing job and you're treated like a hero, or you do an ordinary job and people go, well, totally within reason. You've had 6 minutes to shoot an 8-page feature. That's totally fine. And it's a win-win for me, which is great. The ones that really stress me, and especially when the editors turn around and go, oh, this is going to look amazing, is when you've got GT2 or something and amazing roads and amazing light, and everyone's like, oh, what's he going to come up with? And I'm just like, oh, hang on.
Or is it the case when you walk into a studio and you've got in the back of your mind, you're like, my boss is paying like $3,000 an hour to have this space and I can do anything in the world. What do I do?
Well, I mean, happily for us, we've got a studio at work. So
really?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
We've got one with a turntable.
Oh, wow. That's very
cool. We've had some cool things in there, and currently the Peugeot is living next to there because its usual house is being outed by a Porsche Spider, which is got a soft top, so it can't stay on the road. So
that's completely fair.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's the studio.
So that's a 22B 22B Subaru on the studio with what looks like quite a lot of smoke haze and different sort of coloured strobes, sort of giving it quite a 90s midnight street racer sort of vibe to it, which I think is quite cool. Picks off with the gold of the wheels into the gold of the smoke, and obviously the blue, and then obviously what's that? The pink from the STI badge there too. Was that intentional or just kind of lucky?
First of all, thank you. Second of all, I've just said that I don't add things into photos, and obviously
I pulled that one up.
your boy's talking some real yeah. So that smoke is fake, but everything else is there, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, the gold and the pink were intentional, and I was really working on this sort of shards of light theme for that, which I'd wanted to for a while. I did a previous practice shot with a chimney where I used that idea of sort of minimalist building shape. The thing is, if you light a car too much, it loses its shape. And the thing with the 22B is it's got those hips. And so you really want to work on building the shape by being quite careful and minimalist with the amount of light that you chuck at it. And so I thought shards of light, it's got this sort of metallic paint, it's going to sort of do something at least. And then I thought, well, why don't we make the shards the colors of either the Subaru. I think there's a portrait one where I sort of made the shards into the colors of the PlayStation buttons.
Cool.
The most devastating thing is I missed a play on word, which was McRae Station. I'm kicking myself. I came up with it. Like if you look at the comments, I did come up with it, but way later than I should have, and I apologize to all my adoring fans for that.
27 weeks ago, I'd say you can post that again with that comment, and we won't call you out on it.
No, can't do that. People
on Instagram, you can story that, repost it as a story and do it
with McRae Station. Oh, look, you can see my hashtags there. My absolute desperate.
Please give me likes.
Please see this photo.
Does anyone actually go into Instagram and search for Cargram or IG cars?
Yeah,
there must be so much shit comes up.
Look,
work.
I hate to be that guy, but I think it's bots, and I don't care if it's bots. I mean, I sort of do. I mean, yeah, Instagram is for me so far the most powerful way of networking with people, and if hashtags help me get there, then so be it. I'll put up hashtags on all my photos.
Yeah,
but it is a bit cringe, I must say. I am self-aware like that. If anyone's watching and they think I'm an absolute div, you're probably right.
I like how you space them down so you don't sort of see them.
Oh yeah, I don't want to bother people. No, yeah, I don't want to do that.
That's good. No, it's good. So I guess it's an interesting. Obviously I'm aware of time, so we probably should wrap up soon. But what is the media landscape in Australia at the moment? Obviously, we've gone through a really interesting / devastating time going through. And let's be real, it probably wasn't insanely healthy sort of to begin with. What's it like at the moment out there in sort of pro magazine world?
Magazines are an interesting one, and I think there is a lot of cynicism behind a lot of the comments out there, but I think there is still a huge amount of place for them. One of the points that I'd like to mention is being on the other side of the magazine world and actually being part of a team that creates them. You do get these really stupid comments by people who think that the whole office got into cars from watching Fast and Furious, and they don't really know anything, and they get these absolute clout cars, and that's it. And that can't be further from the truth. Like, the people behind these magazines are completely passionate in what they do, and I'm a much bigger petrol head than I am a photographer, and I can wax lyrical all day about cars, and there's no loss in transmission, there's no one not understanding what I'm on about. Everyone's on the exact same page because everyone is just as bad and completely engrossed in cars as everyone else. So I think, that's one thing that I'd like to put straight, because I've been in Facebook groups where they share stories that we do, and there's either an emission, like a tire test story, there'd be like a tire emission that should be there, and obviously that comes back to us not knowing what we're talking about. How on earth couldn't you put a PS4 in there? It's like the best tire ever. Why not? I'm like, well, because they didn't give us one. It was a legit because we don't know about PS4s. Obviously we do. And you see these people and go, wow, you really think we're idiots, don't you? And then people telling us that, Teslas should be in Picotti, and it'd be so easy to do. This is how you do it. You could do this, and the only charging station is 30 k's away. I'm like, well, first of all, that's a round trip of 60 k's, and then you saying the car only has to do 15 laps of a racetrack is complete bollocks. Like, we've got to have the cars going the whole time. Don't tell us we're not trying hard enough. There's a logistical thing that you obviously don't understand. You do get comments where these people, there is a lack of understanding, and we do our best. But on the other side of that, I think there is still a massive space for magazines in the market. I think there is still, much like the resurgence in vinyl, there's this yearn for a tangible object that you can get your information from, and you can feel it, and you can have it, and it's perhaps something that you can put on your shelf. Wheels and Motor do subscriber covers, more so Wheels these days, and they're really toned down designs for the cover so that it's something that you can have and you can keep, and it looks nice, and it's almost, it looks a bit more like a book than a tabloid. And it's because it's these people that don't need their attention to be grabbed because they've already signed up with us.
Well, you're not competing on a shelf,
No, exactly. You don't need to blast headlines at people. And so, because there are that market of people out there who are still reading, and who are still as passionate about cars as we are, I think there for sure is still a market for magazines. Whether or not, it's real sort of smash and grab stuff, or if it's more thought out, concise storytelling, remains to be seen.
Because I certainly find, Mike, and maybe we're a little bit biased in this, but I mean, and I realize, a lot of people don't sort of sit behind computers all day, so that's fine. But in my leisure time, literally the last thing I want to do in my leisure time is look at a screen. Like, I spend my work time doing it, so that's a rule. Weekends, no screens. And that's kind of where magazines fit in, because you can sit down with a coffee or a drink, you can take it to a cafe, you can take it to, let's be real, the bathroom, and you can have something to read that's not scrolling. And because the differential for me between looking at really awesome, and as much as I love outlets like Petrolicious and that, the differential between looking at great awesome content online and then work online is just not big enough. It's the same sort of thing. And it's interesting to hear.
I think the other thing to touch on is what magazines are needed for has slightly shifted since the internet has become so big. I sound like an old man. But magazines back in the 90s, I grew up reading magazines, and that's where you get your news. Whereas you don't necessarily now, because you've seen everything 3 weeks ago and the magazines only come out. So magazines are now serving more of a purpose to tell stories, or to have that final word from professionals who really know what they're talking about, rather than the thing straight away. And it's something that I think, as a long-time Top Gear fan, TV show, it's the same sort of thing. Back in the day, they had the corner marketed. You could wait half a year to a year to watch the new Speciale video, because that's the only way you're going to find informational video about that, and that's how it's coming. But now you've got vloggers going to the launch, you've got Carfection and stuff doing things straight away. So what Top Gear has changed, because they no longer serve that market of first come review. It's, what can we do with this car? How can we tell a story? And how great can we make this lifestyle come across as? And I think, there are translations between that and also what magazines do these days as well.
Because it's really interesting, because I remember back in the day, certainly I started reading Wheels back in the 90s, and it really was about the first drive. We're the first to drive the Diablo, and that legendary story where Peter Robertson crashed it into the guardrail, and there's the picture on the cover of the crashed yellow Diablo nosed into the guardrail, and that sort of stuff. And you're right, you hadn't even really seen a picture of this car before.
No, you don't see them.
And here's a guy that's nosed it into a barrier. But is it interesting? Like, we need to get, I think, Stuart Bose onto the podcast sometime. But I remember he told us a story. He ran an agency that did a lot of the photography for WRC and rally in the 90s, late 80s and the 90s. And the way he told us how they physically got a photo from a special stage in Sardinia onto the front page of the Daily Telegraph, like the next day. And it literally involved... No, it was a guy flying. They had a guy who would be on the stage. They wait till the guy the kind of top 3 cars who they thought were going to win. They wait. Those 3 cars would come through. They'd get the photo, jump in their hire car. They'd speed to developing a processing center in Rome or Milan, wherever, was good. They'd have someone waiting. They'd have the photos developed, duplicated out. Then they'd have someone waiting on standby with a ticket to fly back to Australia, and they'd take those photos. They'd jump on a plane and they'd physically fly them and hand deliver them to the newspaper editor, and then they'd be pasted onto the page and they'd make the sports section the next day. And that's how they did it. And now, you've got people bloody live streaming Instagram and as it happens, and you don't even think about it. And it's incredible.
I think for me, magazines you digest the content so much more. Like it's that part of that scroll generation, right? You see something that's cool, move on, move on, next thing. Whereas a magazine, I always find digest the content, appreciate the detail, go into that stuff so much more than what I would in a fleeting moment on your phone.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think one of the things that I really drove me to get into graphic design at uni was opposed to that scrolling mentality where you've got a wall of text and you've got images and you've got a wall of text and images and perhaps a gallery at the bottom, which you're then supposed to lace into what you've just read. You've got this flow of information, and the words are to do with what you're looking at and how they space it out and what photos that they use to accompany that really helps to tell a story, I think. And it is an art. It's not, just slap some words, put some margins in, do some paragraphs, and hey-ho. You've got to really think about what photos complement and what needs to sing and what is just there because it has to be.
Mate, even in what we did with Sports Car Safari, Luke tears his hair out, and I'd say I've been tearing my hair out, but but Luke tears his hair out at trying to, hours staring at a blank page, going, how can we do this? And there's so much thought that goes into it, and it's not a quick post and chuck it in and away you go, which is it is. I mean, for me, definitely, I've the I don't know if you've seen a copy of The Road Rat, which is a magazine out here. It is. I've got a couple of copies right here.
I've got 2 of them, and I just think the biggest power move that the opening essay on the first issue is an essay by Giugiaro, and I'm like,
but
so what have I got myself in for?
I mean, it's £12.50. It is, plus unity is what, $20-25. I would literally pay $100 for this. It's the best value for money I've ever seen it. And I guess it takes that concept we're talking to wheel. No. Where I was going with this is it slows it down, because it's not even quarterly. I mean, they go months between sort of drinks on this stuff. But I'll spend 2 months reading a copy, because I always sit down when I've got a quiet moment. Dense. And I'll just read a story, and I'll just sit and read that story, and it will take me half an hour, and I'll put it away, and then in a week's time, I'll get it out again and read another story, and it really just sort of slows that consumption down. Kind of what you were talking about, which is. So
how are you with preserving the condition of your magazines? Because one of the things I found with Road Rat is the stock is amazing, and the smell is amazing, and you can't spread anything. It's always like this. And so do you break the spine and do you sort of fold it out? I've seen some people do it, and I'm like, no, that's really lackadaisical of you. I couldn't do that. So I've got this sort of, you have to sort of open it that much, and you're sort of craning in to see into the middle of it. I'm like, but the whole thing is so nice. I don't want to damage it. But I want to
so mine here, this issue, my issue 4 of theirs, you'll see.
You haven't taken the sticker off?
Sorry, in audio. I haven't taken it off, but I've peeled it back, and you'll see that there's marks across the front of it there where I've peeled it back to reveal the wireframe underneath. But also you'll see that there is a little bit of water damaging where I was enjoying it outside in the sunshine with a beer, and I may have spilt said beer in it. But it takes me back to where I was when I was reading that.
On your Speedmaster, it's the same thing.
I'll tell my kids one day where I was when I damaged my Road Rat.
Wasn't the problem? Mine arrived slightly damaged, and I want to buy the next 2, but it's just slowly eating away at me. I'm like, and it's like that much. off like one edge. It's minutely dog-eared, and I'm like,
You know, the obvious answer is you need two copies. You need a reader copy and a museum copy.
I do have that with some magazines, and I do, especially when I get covers. I do. I just when I can, I go into the box and I get a couple.
So you keep all the wheels? You've got the collection, have you, with your work?
With my work, yes. If there's a particular issue with not much, or if it's just like one first drive, probably. I just had a desk clean out for the first time in 3 years, like when we moved downstairs at the start of the year. So obviously it'll stay around for a while, but yeah, I'll look through them, and if I've got a decent amount of stuff in it, I'll keep it. But if it's like one first drive of a Kia Seltos. Is it a Kia? It is a Kia Seltos.
I don't even know what that is. I don't really care, to be honest.
It's a lovely car. But
yeah, sounds like it's got too long a warranty for me.
It sounds like it's the supervillain in a Transformers movie. What it does.
To be fair, I mean, when the warranty is the single biggest selling factor of a car, I think that's a red flag that they're trying to, I don't know.
I mean, the Korean cars these days, they've upped their game. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, if I've only got if I've only got 2 pages in a magazine, I'll probably get rid of it after when I'm clearing out. But if I've got major features or stuff, I've still got piles of newspapers at home from when I got the front pages in Wagga Wagga. So yeah, I'm not about to throw things away that I used to spend good money on as a kid before I started. I'm getting it for free in my stuff, so now I'll be like, no, I'll definitely keep that.
Yeah, very cool.
Well,
yeah, I think that's pretty good. Thank you, Alastair. I'm glad we overcome those tech problems. And thank you, everyone, for sticking with us.
About this, I'm so sorry.
These are the times we live in. This is what happens. So it's all. So thank you very much.
Fine.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure to talk.
So what's the best way for people to get you, Alastair, if they want to follow your work and see what you're doing?
The best way is my Instagram, which is at Alastair Brook. That's my name spelt, and that's ALASTAIR Brook with no E.
Perfect. Or pick up a copy of Wheels Magazine and look for the photo credit.
There I am.
There you are. In the front.
Yeah. Mate, thank you. It's been real.
Sorry, follow back. What's that all about?
Oh, that's awkward.
Oh, what follow back?
Whoa. Jeez.
You've had
I'll put that back on the social media manager for Sportscar Safari.
Because I follow personally, you got to go and follow with the SCS.
Yeah.
Well,
Luke,
thank you.
On my profile.
As we mentioned, issue 3 is literally at print as we speak, so that's going to be dropping hopefully next podcast. We will have the copies to show you.
Yep.
Next week we are joined by Tim Possingham, who, if you are not aware of Tim, amongst a lot of hats that he wears, a lot of really interesting hats, but he's the man behind the rebirthed Classic Adelaide and Adelaide Rally. Obviously, they're going to be one of the first sort of bigger events to get back underway, so we're going to hear about that. They're accepting entries. Tim's a pretty handy driver himself, so we're going to be sort of hearing about
speaking about R32 GDR tarmac racing and
tarmac rally
building
cars
quattro rally cars and all that kind of stuff.
So it's going to be a good chat, and also I think a very informative chat for those people wanting to sort of learn about what's happening and how this is all going to get back underway, and then
maybe a bit of appreciation for behind the scenes too. So I think that'll be cool for people to hear.
I think it'd be good to hear.
And he's probably going to have better internet as well.
Well, he's going to be in person at Luke's.
So it'll be good.
It'll be me that's the problem. So all right. Thanks, Alastair. Thanks, everyone.